start with this diagram, which is in front of us over here. Okay, this is actually the diagram or the topography of the Temple Mount. If you want to look at my palm over here, this is the topography of Jerusalem, my palm. This is the Mount of Olives. My watch is where your hotel is located, that's north. All right, and we have three valleys which cross Jerusalem from the north to the south. The one at the foot of the Mount of Olives is what we call the Kidron. The one which you're standing within right now, it's called the Cheesemakers. And the third one, which is over here, actually, it starts at the western side of the city, going around it to meet the other two. We call it Gehenna, which means hell. These are the three valleys. Let's look at the model, which is in front of us over here. I'm standing right now at, look at me right now, at the Mount of Olives. Okay? Straight down below me, this is where we have the Kidron Valley. Then, we have the topography of what we call the Temple Mount. The first city of Jerusalem was built between two valleys, which is actually the one called the Cheesemakers over here, and the one which is over here known as the Kidron Valley. The highest point overlooking the city is this ridge which is over here. Up here. That's the highest point. What is the high place? The high place is the place which is the highest overlooking the city itself. And usually high places will be moving from one place to another with the city. Not in Judaism for one reason. Because this is the place where Abraham brought his son Isaac to sacrifice. This is the place where later on David would brought the Ark of the Covenant. And Solomon would come to build later on his temple around the year 964 BC, finishing it around the year 924 BC. This is how Solomon's temple would have looked like. This was destroyed by the Babylonians in 586 BC. Check it out. Rebuilt by Ezra back again in the year, or let's say dedicated in the year 516 BC. And this is how the temple, plus minus, would have remained up till the year 21 BC. Well, just one thing to mention. In the year 37 to 31 BC, Herod the Great comes to the northern part of the temple, and he built a fortress, which if we are, I wonder if that will change or not. Okay, anyway, Herod the Great comes and put a fortress over here at the northern end. No, here we go. No, forget this one right now. Forget the screen. He comes and he puts over here a fortress at the northern tip of the temple. Herod in the year 21 BC started not building a temple, a project of the expansions of the temple. This remains what it is, but let me take it out for a minute, because what Herod does for the first time, he doubled the size of the temple by, first of all, cutting this rock out, building this platform in. If you remember right now the Tomb of the Patriarchs, something similar to this, and this would have been on the top of it. What Herod does, he doubled the size of the temple by adding the platforms which you can see north and west of the temple. Now, notice one thing. To be able to go on expanding that, try to notice once again the topography of it. It's irregular, unequal. Can you see that? Uneven. To be able to do this, to put this platform, you have to go on and build a box. Western, southern, eastern walls. Okay? Western, southern, eastern walls. Arches within it, vaulted chambers, and then pave it on very top. That's the box which Herod the Great built. All this was destroyed in the year 70 AD. This piece literally was razed to the ground. When Jesus says, not a stone will be left on another, this is the temple, everyone, not this. That one, we don't even have a stone one on another. From the retaining walls, the exterior retaining walls of the temple, yes, we have bits and pieces here and there, and that's one thing which we're going to be talking about through the coming 2-3 days. Such like the western wall which we have pointed out for you coming up. And listen, I know it's not easy to understand this yet one shot. Okay, I just wanted over here to give you a very simple introduction into what we're going to be seeing. It's a puzzle which we're going to be building it together. Okay? Is the idea, the general idea, clear? That's good. Where you are right now, we are literally on the streets of Jerusalem 2,000 years ago. This is the stairway which would have actually led all the way to the top of the bridge. Remember, the bridge is up there. It led all the way to the top of the bridge leading to the Temple of Jerusalem. One thing. Once you're looking right now at the drainage system, notice that underneath it, look at the sewer system underneath it, what looks like a vaulted arch. Can you see it at the back end? Yeah. Remember this one, because tomorrow when we go to the excavations further down, we're going to go on and pick up what we show you here. Okay, we are within a room which was used by the scribes, definitely by the scribes, and definitely by those responsible, or most probably, for the burning of the incense at the temple or the pouring of the oil into the menorahs. How do we know this? If you were to look right now over there within that showcase, you can see what's something which looks like cannonballs, can you? Yes. But leave the cannonballs, which are cannonballs, and look at this cheese loaf. What looks like a cheese loaf. That's actually a unit of weight. Everything would have been weighted, all right, and they had to go on by measurements, which of course we have a great detail about it in the Talmud about the measurements at the temple, measurements of how much of incense to be burned, of how much of oil to be poured into the oil lamps, and so on. And this is what indicates that this room would have been used by the scribes. Now, of course, the vaulted arch above you once again collapsed, was destroyed as a result of the wars with the Romans in the year 70 AD. And then the Muslims comes and put this vaulted arch on the top. In the 13th century AD, now notice, the vaulted arch, 8th century. In the 13th century AD, with earthquakes and a new neighborhood built above us, they were afraid that this might cave in. That's why they put the pillar over here to support it. So this pillar used to go all the way to the top. Make space through you, just for the women or the other ones who might be coming out through us. Now we have over here a problem at this place. So far, if you notice one thing, I did not ask you to cover your heads because this is not designated as a holy site. Men, I did not ask you to cover your heads for that reason. No yarmulkes, no hats, no nothing. And there's a very big problem over here that you can see the women coming to pray in this area, and it's a dilemma. I mean, they have to decide really if this is a prayer place or a visitor's place. Because we are disturbing them badly. They keep, and they pay us that look. Some of them are sweet and nice. I mean, there was this lady over here who paid us a smile. Okay? Jesus entered Jerusalem only the last 2 days of his life. Before that, Jesus never entered the city. Why? Because behind this wall, above this wall, lies the Temple of Jerusalem. Jesus came to the Temple of Jerusalem. He never came to the city. And there are two separate units, 100%. Two separate units. The laws applies for this, do not apply for that. The city actually was not attached to the temple. And this continued all the way up till the 13th century AD. Only in the 13th century AD, for the first time ever, Jerusalem and the temple were attached together. Look above me. What happened is that the Crusaders occupied Jerusalem. They massacred anyone who was not a Christian. The mosques, which are on the top, they converted them into churches. When the Muslims recaptured the city, for the first time ever, they felt the danger over their shrines. To defend it, they brought the city to the temple. And a neighborhood was built above us. Top of it is 14 feet. All this used to be smooth. Forget these niches, they did not exist when this was brought up over here. And then the other thing which I would like you to notice, look at the stones below it, and you can see that I have about half an inch space between this course and the course below it. And when you're looking at the course below it, you can see Herod's signature, just like what you saw at the tomb of the patriarch. What we call BOS, B-O-1-S, 3 margins, one within another, outer margin, middle, and inner. Polish this stone, it gets white. That's the natural color of it. As white as snow. And think right now of the sun hitting it like at sunrise, and the reflection of the light, that it gives it that golden color. Try to just think of that, because later on we'll be talking about sunrise and so on. But one course means one row of stones lying on another. We are about 50 feet. We are more or less about 50 feet from bedrock, about 35 feet above the street levels from 2,000 years ago. That means we have more or less about 7 courses of stones below us. In the streets of Jerusalem 2,000 years ago. Walking down the street, or actually up the street because we're in a valley, this is the gate which were parallel to the Holy of the Holies. Remember the arch gate was stood in front of it, where the women were praying? The one which they dug through in 1981. So that's one which is over here called the Warren Gate. And we walked later on along the tunnel, more or less up to here.
So we were in that tunnel underneath it.
We were underneath that whole
Our
wall.
tunnel actually enters from here and goes all the way underneath along the temple, and then at this point over here, it goes underneath the Antonian fortress in that direction. Because if we would have carried on with the rest of the tunnel, you would see that the road immediately starts twisting to the right. So it goes actually underneath the Antonian fortress and all the way into a moat over here. You can see the little pool at this corner, which was known as the Struthian pool, or the moat of the Antonian fortress. So-called after Mark Antony, built by Herod the Great in 37 to 31 BC. In 31 BC, the Battle of Actium, Cleopatra and Antony are defeated by Octavius, who 6 years later will be called Augustus. Of course, Cleopatra and Antony go back to Alexandria, they commit suicide, but the fortress still and will have remained carrying up the name Mount Antony, or the Antonian fortress as we call it. So this is the western length of the temple. This is the southern western pinnacle of the temple, and this is the northern pinnacle of the temple, the northern western pinnacle of the temple, where we stood at, and the upper platform of the temple. Alright? Now, let me over here look at this model once again. This is the temple itself. This is how it looked when Solomon built it. When Ezra restored it, of course it would not be as fancy. And when Herod the Great refurbished it, he does not build this. First temple, Solomon. Second temple built by Ezra. No third temple yet. Maybe never. Maybe there will be. We'll talk about that as well. When we come to look at the inner part over here, it consisted of, let's say, 2 halls. Or 2 parts, let's call it. Entrance. Now, entrance over here, you can see the laser dot? That's called the Beautiful Gate or the Eastern Gate. Yes. Or the Eastern Gate of the Holy of the Holies complex and not of the temple itself. Because today, not be careful, today the temple itself, here's the Eastern Gate. Look, I'm putting that back again over here. And you come over here into a court, which we call the Women's Court. Why they call it Women's Court? Because that's how far women could get in. 4 chambers stood over here on the sides. This is the storage place for wood, which would be used at the altars. And that's the storage place for the oil, which would be needed for the oil lamps. This room over here is what is called the Nazarites, people with a vow. The vow. Like, for example, a young girl who's 13 years old who decided to take a vow of becoming a virgin. Her name is Mary. This is where actually she would have retreated to. This room over here, it used to be a ritual bath. Lepers were not allowed to come into the temple, and were not even allowed to reach the temple. Not even living in an area where the wind could blow their touch into the temple. That's why usually we put them on the other side of the Mount Olives in a village called Bethany. It's the hometown of Lazarus. Lazarus was a leper, healed by Jesus. When you're healed, you have to be called or to be declared to the nation clean. This is where you come, this is where you bath, and then the high priest will declare you clean. The stairway over here, 14 steps, that's 14 steps of ascent, the symbol for the 14 Psalms of ascent. It leads up to a gate over here called the Nicanor Gate, and then you come over here to a small corridor where men could get in. But men, secular people, would not be allowed to come into this complex over here, actually into this building, not at all, let's say. Alright? Some of them were allowed to, some of them are not. But let's go first of all to this court, which is over here. There was like a little colonnaded area where the men could get in, but beyond this line where my finger is, toward the white building, nobody was allowed to come in. And now, try to look at the white building. Features of a T. You can see that, it looks like a T. It carries a T shape. Yes? Now, it's actually because the back part of it follows up the format of the rock which is located within it, where the Ark of the Covenant was placed on it, and the rear part of the building would have been the dwelling place of God.